Barbecue. I'm Big Lou, and this is what I've got going on for you. We're going to make some stocks today. I'm gonna make a pork stock and a chicken stock, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. Now, what can you do with stock? There's all kinds of things to do. Let me tell you about that in just a minute. Before I do anything else, I want to give a big thank you to Christy at Christy's Cooking Channel. She just gave me my second shout out, y'all, and it's really been helpful. My subscribers have gone way up. She gave a shout out on a little chicken video that she did, and she gave a shout out to some other YouTubers too. They're pretty good. I've been checking their channel out since she introduced me to them. Anyway, I want to thank you, Christy. Thank you for the shout out. This is also Christy's suggestion. Last week, I did a video on a homemade injectable marinade, and I mentioned that I made my own pork stock. And Christy commented on my video, and she said she's never made her own stock before. And I said, well, I make my own chicken stock, pork stock, fish stock, shrimp stock, crawfish stock, but the only thing I don't make my own stock for is beef, and that's primarily because most of the beef I cook doesn't have bones in it. So that brings us to the next point. What's the difference between stock and broth? The best of my research and the best of the things I can come up with, broth is made from boiling the meat, and the juices in the water that you get, what's left over from boiling meat is broth. And if you have the bones in the meat, then that's stock, because in the bones there's marrow. That marrow comes out through the long boiling process, and that gives a little different, richer flavor, more of a gelatin type flavor to it sometimes. I hate to use that word, but if they got the bones in it, it's stock. If it doesn't have the bones in it, it's broth. Got that? And anyway, I just put it up in little mason jars, wide mouth mason jars. Don't use a regular mason jar in the freezer. All right? And or the plastic ball freezer jars, and I freeze it. If you have a pressure canner though, then you can put it up in regular mason jars, and you can pressure can the stock, and you don't have to worry about freezing it. You can just keep it in your counter. And I don't have to go buy chicken broth or beef broth or pork broth or anything like that if the recipe calls for it. Sometimes beef broth, like I said, I don't make a lot of that. But pork and chicken, I do a lot. So we're gonna do pork and chicken here on Big Lou Barbecue. This intro's gone long enough. Let's get to it. Okay, to make the stock, I'm gonna make chicken stock in this pot. I'm gonna make the pork stock in this pot. By the way, if you want a review of quality enameled cast iron, real quick, this is a Walmart special. Not criticizing Walmart. It's a great pot. You can get it for about $40. This one was a gift from my mother to my wife, and it is more expensive than $40 for a smaller pot. But after a few years, this one will stain on the bottom. It's clean, it's just discolored. This one doesn't get discolored. So if you're making a decision on which enameled cookware to buy, if you buy this one, it's much more affordable, but your children won't fight over it when you're dead. If you get this one, it won't discolor, and you can bet your children are gonna fight over it when you're dead. So this is a good pot. We're gonna do the chicken in this one. All right, for the pork, this is some pork shoulder bones. I froze them. I cooked a pork shoulder last week. I froze them, and I just took the bones out, and I'm just gonna boil them with some salt and water. And just pour some water in it like that. Just cover it up, and it's gonna make about that much stock, really. That's about all I need to do. And add some salt to it. And for the chicken, all right, I'm going to I just cut a chicken up to spatchcock or cut in half and barbecue today. And that's the backbone from a chicken, a little bit of the flap. Here's the breastbone, you wanna boil that too. Here's the neck that was included with the chicken, you boil that. Here's the gizzard. If you don't like the innards, you can leave the gizzard out. Here's the liver, I'm gonna boil that with it too. All right, I'm just gonna boil all that. You know what, there's a little bit of drippings there, and boil that with it too, not all of it. And let me get the water right here. Pour in some water. We're gonna turn them on, get them to boiling. This is an induction stove. You have to have a ferrous metal to cook with it, all right? And what I wanna do with these is I wanna bring them to a raging boil, all right? And let them boil for about 30 minutes, and then I cut them down to a simmer, and I'll let them simmer for about another hour and a half. So about 2 hours on the stock. And then once it's done, like I said, I put it up in mason jars, wide mouth mason jars or ball freezer jars, and freeze it. If I ever get a pressure canner, I'll start canning it. But I don't hardly ever buy a store-bought chicken broth or pork broth or anything like that. I just make my own stock. Now, if you want to, you can flavor this with some celery, some rosemary, whatever you want to do with it, some onion in there if you wanted to. But the gumbo, I use this for jambalaya. This goes in just about everything, gumbos, soups, whatever. The pork stock works well and stuff like that too. But anything I'm cooking, I'm going to be adding the celery and the onions and all those wonderful flavors too anyway. So I just leave the stock kind of plain. All right, and that's about all there is to it. Bring this to a raging boil. Let it go for about 30 minutes. Cut it down to a simmer. Let it go for about another hour and a half. And stock is done. Big Lou Barbecue. Okay, well, the chicken has come up to a boil. Microwave's going on. So what I'm gonna do now is just simply turn it down to a simmer. That's about right, about 2.5. And we're gonna let it simmer for about another hour and a half. Big Lou Barbecue. Okay, then the pork stock has come to a raging boil, and we're gonna turn it down to a simmer. About 2.5. Maybe about 2.8 on this, a little bigger pot. Anyway, we're gonna let that simmer for about another hour, hour and a half, and we're gonna dip it out, put it in mason jars, freeze it when I got stock when I need it. No big deal. Big Lou Barbecue. Okay, when your stock's ready, you want to put it up. Now, if you have a pressure canner, you can put it up in any mason jar you want. I don't have a pressure canner, so this jar is out because I'm gonna freeze it. And you see this jar has that little neck on it, and what'll happen is as it expands, it turns to ice and gets solid, it'll crack that top off of the jar. But if you have a wide mouth jar, it's perfectly okay to freeze it in the wide mouth jar. And also, you can buy these little plastic freezer jars. This is one I used. I've already still got chicken stock written on it from the last time I had used a chicken stock, and it's been through the dishwasher. So chicken stock's probably going in this one and this one. Pork stock's going in this one and another one just like it. Like I said, it doesn't have the neck on it, so it's okay to freeze in that. And one day maybe I'll get a pressure canner. I've got a water bath canner, but you probably need a pressure canner to do any meat stuff. So one day I'll get a pressure canner and put it up in jars. I won't have to worry about freezing it. Big Lou Barbecue. Okay, these stocks have been going for about 2 hours or so. After they brought to a boil, I'll let them boil for almost half an hour into the whole cook, and then let them simmer for about another hour. And they're about ready. Let's take a look at the chicken stock. Look at that. Turn it off here. It's still been simmering. And put it up in the jars and save it for when I need chicken stock for dressing or soups, stews, whatever. And I'm gonna pull the meat off those bones, and I'm gonna treat my dog to the meat. I never give my dogs poultry bones. Now, the pork stock, my pork stock's always delicious because I'm always using bones from barbecued pork shoulders or pork butts or whatever to make the stock. And if I do just like one shoulder, I can make the stock out of it. I got to do 2 or 3 butts because the blade in the pork butts are smaller. So to get stock, I've got to save those bones till I cook another one. I usually freeze them until I'm ready to boil them. Anyway, there's the pork stock all simmering. I'm going to take the bones out, strain it, and put it up in the jars and freeze it till I need usually jambalaya or like the marinade that I made last week with this stuff. Comes out great. Also, if I was doing a pork stew or something like that, this is what I would put in it. Anyway, it's time to turn them off, let them cool down, and freeze them up. Big Lou Barbecue.